So I know that we are running behind schedule, so we'll try to be brief, and I'll first address Minister Popović. We know that you embrace the idea of innovation and you desire to make Serbia as an innovation nation. What is your dream?
Thank you very much. But we are running a bit of time, so I think it would be much more interesting to the public to hear you and Stephan. But I think the most important is really to get more entrepreneurial habits in Serbia. We were a socialist country. The dream of any parents was that the kid will get job in the public area, get a flat from the government, and that was the end of the story. So taking that into consideration, we really need to develop those entrepreneurial habits. I would say that still 90% or 95% of the kids who finish school or university want to get job in the big corporation, and not so many, what was the Stephans and JFs, the analyze also brought to the Serbia. We are the best in the region, but we need to develop a lot. So we have lack of startups. I think one very important, it's not only for us, it's for whole region. So if we want to think about peace as an engine for the future, and as you said, we hope that we shall not have Ministry for Foreign Affairs, but Ministry for Innovation Affairs. I think it's to get peace, to get that, we need to raise economy. But one thing is very important, I think, that you send a message, it's the fail of the startup, first fail, second, third, is in our mentality, Serbian mentality, sometimes like a tragedy for the whole family, for everyone. So I think that the knowledge that the failure is actually the fundament of the success, and you cannot get success without several failures, is also very more important. And that mindset, changing mindset from moving to the entrepreneurial one, and also moving to the startup nation, but also to understand that the failure is necessity. There is no success. So I would finish with this, but I would like also that you send us a bit a message of the Israeli entrepreneurial habits, and also about the knowledge that the failure is, I'm sure that you have also your personal experience in this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your remarks. When President Peres would come to a school and meet with the young children, usually they would gather teachers and parents, and he would take the mic and start talking to the children. And the first thing that he would say, don't listen to your parents, and don't listen to your teachers, because they will tell you what you're not allowed to do, what you cannot do, what you shouldn't do, because they want to protect you. But what you have to do is actually discover the potential in yourself, and never be afraid, and dream and go after your dreams and realize your dreams. You can do much more than you believe in yourself. Failure is a big issue around the world when it comes to innovation. A lot of people are afraid to fail. But failure is part of building an innovation ecosystem. You can always learn from failures. You are trained when you fail. And it is not important if you fail. What is important is how you rise and how you continue. And as Rami said, we are investing in entrepreneurs that failed in the past. Of course, we need to understand why they failed, but there's so many reasons why a startup will not be successful. And it brings me to the comment of Winston Churchill that said that defined success as moving from one failure to another without losing the same level of enthusiasm. So you have to do it once and again. And if you failed, you have to stand up and try again. And with that, maybe, Stephan, you have, I think, a more global approach, given your work at Startup Genome, especially focusing on the ecosystem strategy, working with a lot of governments. What is your view today on the impact of innovation on the social side of it, as well as on the economic side?
First of all, Mr. Peres, I want to pick up with something a famous professor of mine said about 20 years ago. He was arguing the world and how is the world developing by showing demographic pyramids and unemployment rates. And he was saying, well, look at these particular geographies. There are a lot of young people, that's the age pyramid, and there's huge youth unemployment. This is a potential for depression, for divide, and for extremism. And when we look around today in the world with our research, we're working with about 31 governments, more than 70 cities around the world, and analyzing the ecosystems, it becomes very, very clear that the innovation ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, sound technology-enabled SMEs, small and medium enterprises, are the net job creators in the world. They are the ones who are providing for high-quality job opportunities. So it's the right answer, using innovation, using the startup ecosystems, technology-enabled small enterprises in order to create a future and high-value employment opportunities. In the UK, I'm living in London. We, 10 years ago, did not really have a startup ecosystem of a meaningful impact. Today, it's about 10% of the national economy. Just imagine that. A mature economy, 10% of it is driven by the startup ecosystem, providing jobs for young, highly skilled people. And that's a 10-year development. To your point, Mr. Peres, you were outlining the story of Israel. This is a 10-year, what can you achieve in 10 years? It's not 5 generations, it's 1 generation.
Many people believe that with innovation now and automation, we're basically eliminating a lot of jobs. And that creates job insecurity. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, you could be an engineer in IBM, as Rami mentioned, and you can have a safe job for 25, 30 years. You can retire happily and enjoy life after retirement. But nowadays, with the level of disruption, that no job is actually stable anymore. And therefore, I think we have to be able to reinvent ourselves. In many ways, we have to become entrepreneurs, each and every one of us. Otherwise, we will be disrupted. How do you see the jobs creation with innovation right now, the positive side and the negative side? And do you study or research the kind of impact it has clearly on the economy, but also how people react to that? Either, for example, I know that in the United States, in many areas of the country itself, which is not part of Silicon Valley or the East Coast, lots of people have simple jobs and they're afraid that with globality they're going to lose their jobs. How do we address this issue? How do we address this divide of a world that moves very fast and people that need to reinvent themselves? You mentioned that some of the people, especially not the younger ones, are actually giving up. They're submitting to the fact that they have no room in this world that is changing so fast.
So we are seeing all these enormous success stories. Net job creation comes out of startup ecosystems. We see the enormous amount of venture capital going into an elite of startup ecosystems and young entrepreneurs. But when you think about generations that are currently in the work process, people of my generation, how do we keep ourselves relevant for that economy? And how open is that part of economy to employment of very diverse talent? These are questions we need to raise. What is the impact of modern technologies that we possibly can't understand, can't even appreciate, like AI, machine learning, all these aspects that are fundamentally going to change the way we work and the qualifications and the value we need to bring to the workplace. So I think my appeal would always be invest as much as you can in lifelong learning opportunities, open up these opportunities for people, not only for students and children, as important as it is, that's the next generation, but what do we do with the generation that is currently in the work process or even unemployed and older? We need to bring them back. And it is interesting, there are some really good examples where somebody of 50 years of age gets retraining, is being brought back, bringing the expertise of a lifelong the lifelong experience in a professional job, bringing it back into a modern tech startup. So this kind of openness to accept diversity in the company is certainly one of the important elements. So lifelong learning, critical skills, technology skills to understand them is a clear priority. I also want to make one remark. I mentioned the word diversity a lot, and we had this discussion about peace, collaboration. One of the most successful startups I know employs about 46 people. They speak 50 languages. They operate in 35 different cultures around the world. It's a very small team, but imagine how international that is. Ethnicity, background. Highly successful, scaling, billion-dollar investments or billion-dollar valuations. That's a way where you can see international collaboration across any divide, any intersection. And age groups are part of that. It's a very diverse team and extremely successful. So I find these elements very encouraging. We are not talking about something that's only aimed at 22-year-old university graduates. We are actually talking about models that are international, multi-ethnical, diverse, and diverse from an age perspective.
From our experience, we have seen that when you have a startup company, whether it's in Tel Aviv or Silicon Valley, or in the UK or other places, when you create something new, it's amazing to see how the creation connects people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religious, working together, building something together. We believe that building innovative companies, even social entrepreneurship, it doesn't have to be high-tech, it has to be innovative. It's attracting a lot of people from different backgrounds. One of the things that we also observed in Israel, and Rami had it in the presentation, is the important role of global enterprises. Israel has 350 global enterprises that set up a shop. Initially, they came to Israel really to leverage on the talent of the Israeli engineers that left the military. We're on a small island. They have no place to run. They are very cheap, obviously, because limited opportunities, and they took advantage of it in a positive way. But by doing it, they brought with them the experience, they brought with them funding, they brought with them connectivity to the market. And actually, this is one of the secret sources of Israel, why Israel managed to become a startup nation. And part of it is because global enterprises came to invest in Israel. The reason they came to invest in Israel is the talent, but also the understanding is that Israel is having a mindset, global markets. And the next question for you, Minister Popović, one of the things that we have seen in a lot of countries around the world, on one hand is that population is risk averse because they have other options. They can invest in real estate, they can work in different things. Why take a risk? And the second thing is when they are starting to do innovative things, they are usually thinking about the region or the country. How do you plan to inspire the young generation in Serbia to become innovators, entrepreneurs, and invent for the big world? And are you inviting global enterprises to Serbia? And basically, what if they are coming to Serbia? Why are they coming to Serbia? If you can share with us the evolution of the ecosystem here.
Thank you. When you look in past a bit, during 90s we had in this region, and we had wars, we had sanctions, we had NATO bombing Serbia, actually, and I'm sure that the most of European countries, if they would be part of that, I'm not sure would they exist today. I think on the other side of the always in something bad there is something good. People started to be much more innovative. Our universities, especially technical faculties, I would say they are the main source of these excellent engineers who started to be much more innovative than their colleagues in the EU countries, on the much more, I would say, with the universities with much more money, with much more funds, and much better possibilities. So I think that the main source we have. On the other side, we need to build infrastructure. I mean, we built as a government in the last 3 years more highways than in last 50 years. I think it's very important. We need to continue with this, because today in 21st century, without the best highways, even digital highways as we call this one, the new one where you can use all these digital accessories, it's I would say the most important. Also, I would say the tax you mentioned. Do we have international multinational companies? We have not enough. We need to attract them to come here. So I think that Rami mentioned the crucial. Why should they come in Serbia? So we need to place Serbia to make Serbia the best place for them to come. But it's very important. It's different culture. It's different the knowledge of the strategic entrepreneurial points. But he mentioned also they need to feel as home. So they need to get better, fantastic engineers, what we have. He mentioned, and you mentioned also, we need to speak English. Everyone needs to speak English, and they need to have all reporting, all transparency on English. But also, they should, concerning the taxes, which is very important today, when the profit, you don't have any more margins in the multi-corporation, huge, 100%. That's in innovation. But if you want to attract multinational corporation, they have certain margins, and every percent is very important. So they need, what we mentioned yesterday when we discussed, they need to have better tax position here in Serbia than in their own countries. At least. Not to pay double taxes to get the money returned, as he mentioned. So I think those things are very important. But on the other side, I think they need to feel the ambient. Serbia is a really good ambient. Everyone said that. Excellent engineers, good geographic position. We are doing these tax initiatives only in last year. We put the tax on profit is deducted to 3% for IT companies and companies with the intellectual property and whatever it brings with it. But also we are doing these tax credits of 25% for the investing in startups. So I think making an innovation ambient will also, we need to continue to bring the entrepreneurial ambient, engineer ambient, but also the ambient for the multinational corporation to get much better perspective, having the position their production and R&D centers, especially in Serbia. I would say that Siemens, I worked with Siemens for many years, even 2 decades, and Siemens didn't have for, I would say, 10, 15 years any acquisition in this part of Europe. And last year, Siemens bought a factory here in Kragujevac. They have already 300 engineers, and they're opening R&D center for the mobility, for the fast trains. So it sent very good message for all corporates of Siemens. And what they're interested now, I spoke also with the ABB management and the Siemens management, they have now special departments for buying startups. Before they had only their R&D centers, but they now have the special departments. So the Serbia is again attracting, I would say, country for buying startups. So when they came here, they came to us and asked, can we again, because we don't have any more, now we have again, open a cathedrals for mobility on the all technical faculties. We did it very, very fast, and today in Novi Sad, in Kragujevac, in Niš, in Belgrade, we are opening new cathedrals on the technical faculties for mobility for the fast train, and it brings, I would say, a piece in this puzzle for the making the good ambient.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. I mean, lots of people must have some questions to address to any of the panel members. If anybody has a question, please.
Hvala vam, dobar dan. Moje ime je Živoslav Milovanović i počet ću sa jednom konstatacijom. Mihajlo Vesović, koji je u Centru za inovacije Privredne komore Srbije, kad je vidio moju inovaciju, rekao je: Živoslave, ovo će za nekoliko godina postati međunarodni normativ u svojoj oblasti. Zapravo radi se o jednoj vrlo jednostavnoj inovaciji, na izgled banalnoj, ali koja je ekološka i koja štedi puno vode. Imam sa sajta, vladinog sajta američkog, podatke da jedna banalna stvar, jedan vodokotlić ima gubitke od 40 centi dnevno i minimalne u proseku ima negde $3,3 dnevno, što su strahovito veliki gubici vode. Hoću da kažem, imamo rešenje koje je patentirano i koje je jedna dobra prilika za strano tržište. Eto, to sam samo hteo da kažem. I da vas pitam, da li mogu, pošto imam procenu patenta za balkansko tržište, da li mogu tu vrednost da investiram u neku inovaciju, u neki zajednički pokretanje neke zajedničke firme. Da li venture kapitalisti prihvataju to? To sam hteo da pitam. Hvala vam.
Da. Pa pošto ste govorili na srpskom, moram ja da vam odgovorim. Pa sigurno je da predstavnici venture kapitala ulažu u praktično sve sfere koje su im interesantne i počinjajući od onog seed ili pre-seed investicija, naravno treba da im priđete. Mi imamo i ovdje u Srbiji, naravno na mikronivou predstavnike venture kapitala, i srpske, dolaze i neki strani, nije malo kompanija koje su privukle i dobile tiket za dalji razvoj od pre-seed investmenta, seed investmenta čak i mnogo više, ali treba budete u komunikaciji. Mislim da je ova konferencija jedno izuzetno mesto da se ta komunikacija i produži i posle ovog panela. Hvala vam.
Anybody has more questions from the audience? There's a lady over there that has a question. Yeah.
Dobar dan svima. Ja se zovem Mirjana Domonji, predsjednica ekološkog pokreta opštine Stara Pazova Ekosan i deo inovacionog Startup centra Stara Pazova. Htjela bih da pitam ovako na jednom zaista eminentnom mestu i osobe koje imamo prilike da čujemo, da li se na globalnom nivou razmišlja o štetnim zračenjima koje zaista utiču na ljudsko zdravlje, a moje mišljenje je da i sprečavaju održivi razvoj, odnosno usporavaju iz razloga što se kao posljedica javljaju i velike porast bolesti, tako da je to jedno zagađenje životne sredine, pa šta se na tom nivou radi? Mi imamo već naših predloga što se tiče eliminisanja tih štetnih zračenja, pa me to zanima šta se radi i dalje. Hvala.
Yeah, maybe allow me to pick that up with a few ideas from what we see abroad. First, as a more generalistic statement, when we think about pollution, sustainability, climate change, etc., what's the answer for the world? Are we going back in development? Do we want to stop economic development and prosperity with all the consequences for human health, for development, for populations? I don't think so. So it is investing into technology in order to overcome the limitations that our old industries are imposing on us. And health and pollution are typical examples. Interesting to note, and we are just coming back from a large conference around ESG, environmental sustainable investment and their governance. That's an industry that allegedly already accounts for 1/3 of all investments, all assets under management globally. And this is a trend that's going to continue. And it is not only investments made by people who are interested in impact development and social investment. These are professional investment companies, asset managers. It is companies that are increasingly investing in environmental friendliness, in sustainability, into governance of these issues, into society. Because they want to do good? Yes, for sure. But also, and that's maybe the bigger driver, and the driver that ultimately will make it sustainable, because it's important for their survival, it's important for their profits. So all of a sudden we come into a situation where technology enabled, new technologies give us new possibilities to avoid negative externalities, yes. And at the same time a mindset finally seems to be changing with the biggest corporate leaders in the world, and says we need to be much more sustainable in order to be a profitable company, a company that has the right to operate in a society. If you don't have that, you are out. These are really things that are moving the industry forward. And I'm really encouraged, just coming back from a region that's extremely hydrocarbon rich, oily, as we said it earlier. And to pick, for even these geographies, to pick up the idea of we need technology, plus we need consideration of sustainable investment in order to fundamentally change the way we operate, because the old model is not going to take us forward. So that's, I think, a very encouraging statement. It's better than politicians talking about sustainability and health in very fancy international conferences. This year seems, for me, to be much more action-oriented, and hopefully we see the fruits of that.
Yeah, as I said, basically I'd like to share with you what we do at Pitango. When we look at the Israeli ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, as Rami described, we started with early stage companies 25 years ago, and we did not have really money to support growth of companies. And as Rami showed, from 2012 to 2019, the investment in growth grew from 400 million a year to over 4 billion a year. So our economy, our innovation economy, transitioned from startup to scale up. And now we are getting into a new phase, whereas we are introducing purpose in what we do. And we believe that companies that will embrace ESG, the concept that you have to be very responsible towards the environment, toward the society, and the way you govern your business, and actually also focusing on the 17 sustainability development goals that the United Nations set up. Companies that will have this purpose will be better companies, will be more resilient. They will be able to attract the talent of the young generation that is looking for a purpose and a meaning and to do good. They will be better for their customers and for their business partners. So at Pitango, basically, we decided on two strategies. One is to take our more successful companies, more advanced ones, as Rami showed on the presentation, companies that already sell and grow, and help them to migrate to become impact companies. And at the same time, look at companies that are what we call impact native, those companies that were born with an intention of the founders to do good. And we invite those companies to pitch to us also, and not only to go to impact funds. We tell them that if their financial models is suitable, we'll be very happy to embrace them. So we are now entering into the fourth phase of innovation in Israel. From necessities, defense, economy, into a new age of purpose and making our society and our planet safer. So that is a very good question, and thank you very much for the question. Please.
First row.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Tony Cusoli from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and organizer of the Smart City Festival. We have heard that the State of Israel entrepreneurs and everybody is very able to take a risk, a calculated risk. And we know also that this is very true for the Asian markets, where risk is something that's been happily taken. But we also know that in Europe, we are not that risk-friendly. Dr. Popović has given us a very good example coming from Serbia, that risk failing is not something that's very deeply rooted in our culture. So my question would be, what would be the European model for risk-taking for the future and able to be competitive with all the other nations and regions which are more careless when it comes to taking risk?
I can share with you the Israeli experience, and since we are traveling all over the world, I can tell you that there are a lot of risk-averse countries, not only in Europe, also in Asia Pacific. For example, in Korea, we had a seminar in Korea. The Koreans are very, very risk-averse. Also Australia. Because it's a very rich country, because they have a lot of natural resources they can actually ship to China and to Asia Pacific. Why should they take a risk? But let me say this, not taking a risk is the most risky thing, because the world is moving very, very fast. It is changing very, very fast. And countries that are lagging behind will find it very hard to catch up. There is very limited time because everything is becoming technology oriented. 25 years ago, when we invested in startup companies and went to the banks asking them to give loans to startup companies, they looked at us like we fell from the moon. They said, your startup companies have no business, they have no assets, how are we going to secure our loans? But the banks today are users of cyber technologies, of data centers, of big data analytics. As a matter of fact, there is no enterprise in the world today that can say, I'm not a high-tech enterprise. The digital wave is disrupting all the industries, from banking to insurance to healthcare to mobility, even prop technologies or construction technologies. All the markets are being disrupted. So you need to decide if you want to be disrupted or a disruptor. And so for me, it is a mindset first and foremost of the government. The government has an important role that it can really change the ecosystem. That also happened in Israel. Without the government interference, without taking action, without saying we want to be an innovation nation, because Israel was afraid to take a risk and all our economy was collapsing. The only reason is to look at, or the upside is to look at what we have gained from entering this new era of innovation and entrepreneurship. So I think this is a very big undertaking for the government in Serbia. Our observation is that the mindset is clearly there. The clear understanding that Serbia needs to become an innovation nation. You have to invest in the young generation and you have to teach them and inspire them that failing is okay. Everyone fails. I mean, learning from failure is the best way to make progress. You know, Rami and I, we were in the Air Force and in other areas in the defense forces, especially in special units. When you do training, you did something wrong, we expect you to stand on the stage and share with us all the mistakes that you did, so everyone can learn from this experience. And more than you fail, if you repeat that mistake, then you're a failure. But it's okay to make mistakes. It's human. Everyone makes mistakes. We make mistakes in everything we do in life. So why not do it in business, in entrepreneurship? That's the only way to go about.
Just to add to it, I'm really encouraged. The last time I was here in Belgrade was in early 2017, and the culture was reflecting of what you just said. For somebody coming from university, young girl, young boy, entrepreneurship certainly was not the preferred choice, the career plan A. I think this is gradually changing. Some Northern European countries, to set an example, being an entrepreneur is the #1 career choice today. In my generation, it was a lawyer, a doctor, you name it, an accountant. So something fundamentally has happened. Does this culture change? And I believe government, and Minister Popović, Ana Brabić, your prime minister, when I hear them, they are always leading the conversation about the innovation ecosystem, about entrepreneurship for startups, for SMEs. I think that's the right messaging from political leadership. I believe with institutions such as DSI, Digital Serbia, also entrepreneurs and corporate leaders to join into this conversation and to say entrepreneurship taking risks is something you ought to do. I think these are the right signs. They're incredibly encouraging. The other element, that's communications and culture change. The other element is to practically support and de-risk somebody who takes the career as an entrepreneur. Early stage funding is a good example. The moment we get that right, help angel investors to engage better and more broadly with the ecosystem, all of a sudden the financial risks for entrepreneurs are lower. If you fail, do you find a way back into a corporate career? Can we encourage that with some mechanisms? Certainly yes. So these are some considerations. But it's really interesting to note, I came here first in 2015. I think a lot has changed from a cultural perspective, but also from the support mechanisms we see here, jointly between government or government-led and supported by community and private industry.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you so much. I think we have to conclude. I don't know if we crossed the time or not, but I understand that we need to conclude. And let me go back to Winston Churchill. In 1942, in the midst of the Second World War, he traveled to the US and delivered a speech in one of the Ivy League universities in the East Coast. And on stage, Churchill said that the empires of tomorrow will be the empires of the mind. And I think that his vision, his ideas are taking place nowadays. When President Peres traveled to Silicon Valley to meet some of the greatest entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, he met Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and CEO of Facebook. And I think at that time he was like 88 years old, and not Mark, President Peres. And he opened the page on Facebook. And when he came back home, he said that when he looks at Facebook, when he looks at Mark Zuckerberg, he sees the greatest revolution in the history of human beings that was done without an army, that there was no single gunshot fired and no bloodshed. And still, this young man created an empire that is influencing the lives of billions of people around the world. Which means that we are really entering a new generation, a new age of possibilities and responsibilities, because these entrepreneurs that are building these companies have a lot of responsibility to humankind. They have responsibility to our future. They have responsibility to our environment and our societies. The good thing is that these companies have customers that can judge on a daily basis how the leadership of that company is behaving. And that is the new world that we're entering. And that new world has a tremendous economic impact. This is why all this money is flowing and investing in technology, startup companies. But it also has implications on our society. Because as we advance forward, the divide between those who are left behind and those that are enjoying the journey is actually growing. So our role is not only to grow our economy, but also to make sure that we close the gap, that we teach the young generation how to cope in a world that is moving fast forward. So let me conclude by thanking the panel members, Stephan Kuester from Startup Genome and Minister Popović, and see us as friends and partners, see us as innovation affairs, not foreign affairs. We would very much like to be part of the future of Serbia. And let me finish by saying an old proverb that came from Africa. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So together with Serbia, we as Israelis would like to go fast and far as much as we can. Thank you so much.